welcome back to another episode of the Double Doing Podcast. My name is Brendan Deek. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. You can also rate the podcast and review the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. It would also be greatly appreciated. Really cool episode for you today. We're talking strictly Philadelphia Eagles with my man, my friend, returning guest. He is the anchor of 6 p.m. news for ESPN Sportscenter. Kevin Negandhi is with me. Kevin, what's going on?
Brendan, how are you, man? We've had some time to kind of let it wear off, but I don't think I don't know about you, but I can't watch the game. I was there. I was lucky to be there with my family. Phenomenal experience, but I had somebody hit me up earlier this week, and they were like, "Man, the mistakes we made." And he had the TV on. I was like, "Yeah, I can't watch it. I don't think I'm gonna be able to bring myself to watch that for a very long time, if ever."
I dissected the game like 2 days after, and then I put it to bed. Been trying to put it to sleep. Have you ran into like the funniest part about like your team being in the Super Bowl is, and especially when it's a good game, is the amount of like non-Eagles fans that come up to you and go, "It was such a great game. Like it was so entertaining." It's like, well, yeah, for you.
Like, and considering where I work, Brendan, so I'm with a lot of smart sports people, and their fandom is, throughout. So it doesn't matter what team. They love just following sports because that's why we're at ESPN. I've run into so many people who come up to me and first off make sure I'm okay, like somebody died, which I'm actually like, wow, you like I'm handling it much better than you think, and they say, "God, but it was such a good game." And I'm like, yeah, well, that's what I've heard. It was a good game because the entire time you're a part of it, you're not thinking it's a good game. You're thinking, how do we get the lead or how can we get this stop? And the consensus of everybody I've talked to, whether you're, a fan of the Eagles or not, I think what everybody wanted to see was Jalen Hurts with the ball with a minute 20 to go, regardless of the outcome. And I think if you polled the entire city of Philadelphia, they'd be okay if they lost the game with the awareness that Jalen Hurts had the opportunity to do something with a minute 20. And that's literally the one thing I think everybody that was invested in that game as a fan, a general sports fan, wanted to see, except the Chiefs.
I've been saying there's not a doubt in my mind that if Jalen Hurts gets the ball back with a minute, or I think it was just a minute 20 left, he's either kicking a field goal, and I think the more likely outcome is that they're leading a touchdown drive. They still had a timeout left. Jalen Hurts is playing out of his mind. I'm not saying the penalty was the reason they lost because they should have been in that situation to begin with. There were many unforced errors on their end. The Eagles didn't lose because of the field, didn't lose because of the penalty. They lost just because they kind of beat themselves in the game.
They couldn't get one stop. That's all they wanted, right? Yeah. And Orlovsky did a great job. I was with, one of my sons and my cousin when it happened before the punt, where the Chiefs had the big return. And I said to my cousin, "Why are we throwing the ball on 3rd and 2?" I just could not understand that. And Orlovsky did a good job with explaining that as well. And that's where the game fell apart. But Gannon couldn't make a stop, completely fooled by the jet motion, didn't have any adjustments the second time it happened as well. That's the frustrating part. The Eagles had the opportunity. We wanted to see Jalen Hurts perform with the pressure on. And I will tell you, when there was a TV timeout, Jake Elliott had come out, and you're seeing this stuff, TV, you're watching commercials, but Jake Elliott had come out to the 50-yard line while the Chiefs had the ball and everybody's on the field, but the timeout was continuing. And Jake Elliott was envisioning a kick from literally inside 50 yards. And I turned to my cousin and I was like, if we get the ball and he gets the opportunity to kick a 58-yard field goal, I said, he's going to make it. He's right now envisioning it. He literally walked through, looked at the goalpost, and did the windup like 3 times during that timeout, and then went back to the sideline. I'm like, he's literally envisioning, and we're going to go to overtime. And we didn't have that opportunity.
So what was your Super Bowl setup like? Where'd you watch it? Who'd you watch it with? Give me the details.
I was very lucky. I was 4 rows back from the Chiefs painted end zone.
Gotcha.
With my oldest son and my cousin. and my wife was like right above me with. She had actually a better view and better seats with my middle son and my youngest daughter. So we had all great views. She had a much better view from the whole field. Listen, our views were who's complaining about sitting 4 rows back from the field? The Devontae Smith catch coming right at us, the Nick Bolton fumble return coming literally right at us.
Damn.
It was an incredible experience. And honestly, that I say that time and time again. If 5 years ago the Super Bowl didn't happen with the Eagles winning, I think I would have been more crushed. This was about going to experience it with my kids, my family, and enjoying that experience with them because it's lifetime memories more than anything else. And that's why I fell in love with sports.
It made me appreciate 2017 a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. So how old's your oldest son?
10. He
So
took it hard.
I guess first heartbreak for the kid. Yeah.
Yeah. We were at the NFC Championship game, and he took it hard at the end of the Super Bowl. There were some tears, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, man, like
it's normal.
You can't get everything. This is what happens. This is all about sports." And the best thing I think for anybody that's raising a young kid that's into Philadelphia sports is what Jalen Hurts said afterwards. Just we're going to get better. Mm-hmm. And I just paused for a second. I was like, gosh, he's a great role model for my sons and my daughter to understand that nothing's going to be easy. Mm-hmm. Nothing's going to be handed to you. And just when you think everything is going well with a 10-point lead and going into halftime, if you don't play the final 2 quarters, you're going to lose no matter what.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. So my first I was 9, I think, when the Eagles lost to the Patriots in 2004. So that was kind of when my fandom was beginning. So my dad said I cried during that. I don't really remember that game too much, but apparently I was really upset. The game that I really remember that was kind of my first heartbreak was 2008 NFC Championship game against the Cardinals. That game, this loss was tough, and I'm a lot older, of course, and I can process it better. But nothing will beat the 2008 heartbreak, in my opinion. The NFC Championship game.
Brandon,
that game will live in dread forever in my brain. I think about it on like a weekly basis. I've lost my mind.
I got a fun story to tell you about that, Brendan. I was on Sportscenter at the time, and I walked into the studio, and the Eagles had the lead, and we were live. And obviously the defense couldn't stop Kurt Warner on that. And it was in Arizona.
Yeah, Larry Fitzgerald, man. Larry Fitzgerald just ate our hearts apart.
Yes, he did. And I remember the game ended, and we had 25 to 35 minutes of fill time. And I'm on the set with Trent Dilfer and Merrill Hodge.
Okay.
And it was like I visited my therapist. I just unloaded. Like I got the whole game out of my system. And it was with very objective questions, hard-hitting questions, going to news conferences, coming back with Trent and Merrill and having a conversation on the breakdown of the team, and also what Larry did and Kurt did to get them to the Super Bowl. And I walked out of the studio that day, and I was like, "Oh, the loss is gone now. I got it all out of my system." But I 100% remember everything about that day.
So kind of transitioning to this year's team, what's different from the 2008 team to this year's team is that 2008 team was kind of the last ride, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You had, of course, Donovan McNabb's future was in question. Brian Dawkins' future was in question. Jim Johnson, unfortunately, passed away a couple months after that game. So that team, like when I was a kid, I still knew that was the end of that era. This team is not. This is a team that can 100% get back to where they were last year. Of course, they're led by Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. I was doing some research on the Eagles cap situation the other day, Kevin. Like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are combining for $13.8 million against the cap next year, which is absolutely insane. The way that Howie Roseman's kind of able to maneuver this roster. Where do you think this team is going, and what are you expecting from this offseason?
First off, I think the offense is ascending. I think another year with Jalen. I'll be curious what they do at running back with the future of Miles Sanders unknown, and knowing how the Eagles always look to kind of refresh that position every 4 to 5 years through a second-round pick. I'm very curious to see how Howie addresses the defense. I would think he's going to target Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, maybe even franchise tag him if they can't come up with a deal.
I don't think he can leave the building. Like, I think he's got to stay. Like, that should be like Jalen Hurts contract extension #1 priority. Yep. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's a close second.
100%. I'm in complete agreement with you. I think they let Bradbury walk because of the value of the price tag. Yep. And then at 10, do you target a guy like Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State, size-wise, Witherspoon out of Illinois, Gonzalez out of Oregon? Like, do you target one of these CBs there at 10, and then at 31, are you trying to upgrade specifically on the defensive line, right? Because Howie loves doing that. Howie loves offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and cornerbacks and wide receivers. Do we target those areas? And believe me, like, as we've seen, like the Bengals 3-headed monster, you can't have enough wide receivers, right? So I'd be kind of curious to see what they do specifically at 31. But at 10, I would like to think they're going to target a cornerback, or even find a way to move down a little bit more to get more collective space here when it comes to assets and building that defense once again. I feel really good. It's not like 2008. I think Sirianni did an incredible job. I think they're going to target defensive linemen again with the rotation. They've got to get a little bit younger there as well. Considering all the veterans that they had, and they're going to have to find linebackers. And, you know, they don't put a lot of value at the linebacker position, but I think TJ showed a lot of value, TJ Edwards, and what he can do. We'll see if that changes their approach. So how I take it, Brendan, is I was asked earlier this week on Philadelphia radio, how do I view them? Are they Super Bowl contenders? I just said this specifically. How I viewed this season was win the division. Let's keep on going. That's how I view next season. If you win the division, let's find out how far we can go. And that's all you can ask for the Eagles right now. You can't just say, hey, we're going back to the Super Bowl, because people don't understand how tough it is to get to a Super Bowl, especially coming off a loss. So win the division and then build off of that and move forward.
So I pretty much agree with everything you just said on the defensive side of the ball. I'm assuming Chauncey Gardner-Johnson can be back. I would be shocked if James Bradbury returns. He's gonna. This is his last contract, right? Like, he just did the 1-year deal thing. We were the 1-year stopgap for him, right? So I don't think he's gonna do that again. The Eagles aren't gonna pay. I think it was a 1-year, $10 million deal for him this year, something like that. They're not gonna do that over a long-term deal. He can get that somewhere else. A rookie cornerback is the most likely outcome on the other side of Darius Slay. Darius Slay's due $26 million this year. That's not going to happen. They're going to restructure that. So Darius Slay's locked in for the Eagles for 2 years, in 2023 and 2024. So they need a win. This is the window now, in my opinion, to have a Darius Slay kind of, not replacement, but someone he can grow off of and learn from, and maybe take the reins as the #1 corner at some point. So I think that the rookie cornerback thing at number 10, I think there's a lot of people saying they're going to trade down from 10 or trade up. I wouldn't rule out them just picking at 10. Take advantage of that Saints pick, right? And then move down from 31 and get out. Because 30, sorry, because there's actually, I always forget the Miami Dolphins got the draft.
That's right, 30. You're right.
Yeah, so it would be pick 30, right? And I don't know, I think it was 2018, right? The Ravens traded back into the first round to get Lamar Jackson. The Eagles traded out of that pick, and that draft turned out to be awesome. You had Dallas Goedert, Avonte Maddox, Jordan Mailata.
Yep.
That entire draft, Josh Sweat. So I think the most likely outcome for the draft is that they move out of 31, a team, because there's always guys that teams want to jump back into the first round for, get that 5th-year option, quarterback most likely. So I think the trade out of 31 is definitely possible. There's a lot of people that are talking about drafting a running back in the 2nd or 3rd round. Do you suspect Miles Sanders will be back?
I don't. Yeah. I price tag wise, how they value the running back position, how they used him in the Super Bowl. I mean,
he wasn't good.
He was not good, and the turnover, which they basically overturned, is like one of those.
It was close too. Like,
it was very close.
It could have been another turning point in that game.
It could have been critical. So
Yeah.
I don't think. Listen, he had a fantastic season, over 1,000 yards. I think all of us in the city all believed that the potential is like ridiculous on Miles Sanders. Phenomenal talent. Just when are we going to turn the corner? But I don't know if the Eagles offense is one of those offenses where a primary running back, like the Gainwell ran hard between the tackles, and you could see the confidence they had in Gainwell as the season went on. He was critical in big moments. And that just showed me the confidence that had shifted completely. And then Boston Scott is just such a great complimentary back. So I don't think Miles Sanders will be back. And I think it's a mutual thing. Miles said the right things. He wants to come back. But, like, if financially, he's got to get paid as well. I don't know if he will pay him for the value.
Running backs get one contract usually, like after the rookie deal. This is the time for him to go cash in somewhere else. I would be shocked again if Miles Sanders is back. Kai Roseman just never pays running backs. A running back, you do college football on ABC. I don't know if you heard this guy. A lot of people talk about Bijan Robinson as a guy that the Eagles could take. I got one for you. What about Bijan Robinson's backup, Roschon Johnson? Big fan of him.
Roschon Johnson also size, Brandon.
Yeah,
he's like
a big guy. Yeah,
and he's one of those steals that you can get later in the draft, and not a lot of wear and tear. When he was part of the offense at Texas, like, they showcased him, he was very productive. I like a guy like that, where you're going to get value later on in the rounds. Listen, Bijan's special. Like, Bijan is really, really good. I just think the way the game has changed so much, you're not going to see, especially how the Eagles view things, you're not going to see them, take a 10th pick while they have other holes at a position where they could fill that quickly, because they don't believe in giving a back 400 carries. It's just not their philosophy.
Agreed. Let's turn over to the coaching stuff, because that's probably the most hot topic, of course, with the Eagles losing both offensive and defensive coordinators. I want to start on the defensive side of the ball. So I was never the biggest Jonathan Gannon guy from the start. Even I had a lot of criticisms him coming into this year. If you look at the advanced analytics from 2021, the Eagles defense was bad. Like 25th in defensive DVOA. They were 32nd ranked in the red zone. They were just, from top to bottom, the Eagles 2021 defense was bad. Of course, an influx of talent came in, and that defense got a lot better. They were 6th in defensive DVOA this year. They were one of the better defenses in the league, first in turnovers or takeaways, I believe. First in sacks, of course, the defensive line 8 all season. How much blame do you put on Jonathan Gannon for the Super Bowl? 1, and 2, do you think it's a good thing that he will not be back in 2023? It's a tough one, I know.
I put a lot of blame on Jonathan Gannon because there were no adjustments made. Listen, you could get fooled once on the jet motion, like for the first touchdown. The second touchdown's inexcusable. Like, it's just like, are you kidding me? And I understand the brilliance of Patrick Mahomes. Wanting completion, especially the way they finished that first half, and Mahomes was limping. They were getting to him, even though they weren't sacking him. And I just felt he didn't adjust at all. Here's the thing, that after the game, I talked to a couple really, really smart former NFL players. Basically, everything that the Chiefs ran, that was off the Jacksonville tape with Doug Peterson.
4. Yes, week 4, Jamal Agnew scored a touchdown on that exact same play. And
with Doug Peterson.
Yeah, and I don't that should have been a teaching moment from Gannon in week 4. That should not have been able to happen, I guess, 5 months later down the road.
It's not hard to follow and connect the dots. I mean, Doug Peterson's from the Andy Reid tree. So that's the thing that gets me. Like, this wasn't hey, we found something from an obscure play with a coach that has no connection to Andy. It's Doug Peterson. Yep. And that's what drives me crazy. They looked like they were not prepared. I found it very curious. And I've heard multiple people say Gannon does a phenomenal job as an interview and he'll be a better head coach as a DC. Great. Good for him.
Yeah.
I don't think he could have come back to Philadelphia and recovered after that. Just because one of the reasons you brought it up, one of the reasons why the defense upgraded is because Howie got better players.
Exactly.
Right. And so was it really the scheme, or was it just better players on the roster? And in positions that needed to be addressed, like cornerback with James Bradbury, and getting better defensive backups on that front line, right? And getting an active linebacker, Kaiser White. Like I put a lot on Jonathan Gannon. And I will be very curious to see what the philosophy is going to be in Philadelphia next, because the people that they brought in for interviews, you're just sitting there and you're like, like
it's anti-Gannon.
Yeah. And Sean Desai, who's a disciple of Vic Fangio, let's see what kind of approach he may have. And Denard Wilson, where's his? So I'm curious about this hire. What direction they go. Jim Leonard's name was being talked. Jim Leonard was a phenomenal defensive coordinator at Wisconsin. He took his name out of the running. So I can't wait to see who the next guy is and the philosophy of that next defensive coordinator, because I think that plays a huge role. I was never on board with what Jonathan Gannon had approach-wise. And we saw that exposed here in the Super Bowl. When you watch Jonathan Gannon over the last 2 years and you compare the numbers against quality quarterbacks, not mediocre quarterbacks, the numbers are startling, Brendan.
I actually dug up some of the numbers. I'm gonna see if I can pull some right here, just against like kind of quality quarterbacks. So the list was Dak times 3, Mahomes times 2, Brady times 2, Derek Carr, and Justin Herbert. So that's 9 games, 9-game sample size over 2 years. Those quarterbacks were 240 for 297, 81% completion percentage, and 29 touchdowns.
Unbelievable.
And so just like Dak played against backups in the 1 week 18 game in 2021. So there's some of that. He also beat Kirk Cousins and Trevor Lawrence in other games, but it was pouring rain against Jacksonville. So there's not like a huge sample size against a good quarterback for the 2 years for the Eagles, but that is alarming to me. And the way I look at it, and I said on the podcast earlier this week, I wouldn't have fired Gannon after the Super Bowl. Like, I think it's tough to fire an offensive coordinator after he got you there. Like, I don't think the Eagles were going to do that. But as an Eagles fan and a guy that follows his team, I feel better with him out the door, because it adds some juice to the offseason. It adds a little bit of excitement, because you can maybe potentially see this defense getting better, because the only way they probably could have got better is schematic changes that weren't going to happen if Gannon was there, because the talent level is probably going to be less, right? Like, these guys
well said.
Leaving, and you're going to see a lot of influx of youth on this team. Like Nakobe Dean's going to have to start. Jordan Davis is going to have to start. They'll probably have a rookie corner like we talked about. Reed Blankenship could even be a safety starter. He's only 20. He's going to be 24 years old when the season kicks off. So I think Gannon out the door was better than, I guess, the other scenario where Gannon was staying and they would have to rebound.
Well said. Well said. And now I had one thing from that game. How the heck does Travis Kelce get a one-on-one against Epps to score that touchdown when 87's? Everybody knows 87's getting the ball.
Yeah.
There's just certain things where you're like –
and I don't know if you remember this play, another kind of underrated play in this game that I think a lot of people have talked about. 2nd and 8, Eagles needed a stop. It was about 3-4 minutes left. And Travis Kelce gets a free release off the line, does a quick hitch route, 8-yard gain. It was 3rd and inches. Next play, Isaiah Pacheco runs 50 yards down the field.
Yep.
Like, it was, they never got in Kelce's face. There was no, like, just kind of plan to stop him. He was completely outcoached, and I even knew he was pantsing. As a kid, you used to get pants on recess. Andy Reid pants Jonathan Gannon at recess.
100%. 100% agree with you.
Okay. I guess last question for you. What do you make of the Hurts situation? How much money should they give him? How long should they give him? Where is Hurts in the hierarchy of quarterbacks for you? Just give me what your thoughts are on the franchise quarterback going forward.
I think that's the one thing you walk away with. We got a quarterback, right? The Eagles have a quarterback. I would pay him as quickly as possible. And here's why. When you have Lamar sitting there, and a team's going to pay Lamar Jackson. It may not be the Ravens, but somebody's going to pay Lamar Jackson the guaranteed money. When you have Joe Burrow and you have Justin Herbert coming up, that price tag is only going to go up. It's only going to go up.
Yep.
So better now and structuring it the right way. And I have no idea what's going on. So, maybe the offers and the conversations have been made and Hurts wants to wait. But the sooner the better, I think, for the Eagles' sake, just considering how the ridiculous market could be coming in March, especially with Daniel Jones thinking that $45 million is valuable for him. That just shows you what he, basically they think the market's going to be for the top 5 type of quarterback. And those are the conversations with Lamar and now Jalen Hurts and, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So pay them. And we've got a quarterback. And that's the one answer that we got after the question marks we were sitting at, I think 12 months ago, coming off the Bucs loss.
He was so good at the Super Bowl.
It was ridiculous.
That was one of my favorite quarterback performances I've seen from an Eagles quarterback in my life. Like, I think it's top 5. It's got to be.
Brendan, to your point, historic performance. He makes such a costly mistake.
I know.
With the fumble. And the first thing Nick Sirianni does is, all right,
quarterback run.
Next play, 15 yards, right? Yeah. And then his mindset is, I am going to carry the team the rest of the way. And that's what you need as a leader.
Yeah. Kevin Negandhi from ESPN. He hosts 6 p.m. news. He anchors it at ESPN. I'm sure you know him. You know the face. Kevin, why don't you plug in anything you want the listeners to take a look at? Follow you on social media, any of that stuff. You don't got anything to plug in?
No. We'll see you on Sportscenter at 6 p.m. on ESPN. Appreciate you joining having me a part of this, Brendan.
Of course, man. Thanks for jumping on again. We will talk soon and enjoy your night.